This video is about quotations. We're going to talk about direct quotes. Quotation marks are used to enclose a direct quote. In other words, something that comes right out of a person's mouth, their exact words. You put quotation marks before and after a person's direct words. For example, "When the bell rings," said Mrs. Green, "leave the room quietly." Notice you put quotation marks here, right before said Miss Green, and you put quotation marks here when you begin the quote again. "Place the cup over here," said Susan. Notice how you put the quotation marks before said. Alright, quotations and capitalization. A direct quote begins with a capital letter. Lisa said, "No way I am going in there." No is capitalized, even though it's in the middle of a sentence. It's her beginning of her quote, so therefore you capitalize it. When the quote is interrupted, the second part of the quote is not capitalized. For example, "Why not go with us," said Mike, "so you won't be scared." It's interrupted. It's not the beginning of the quote. Therefore, you do not capitalize "so" in that quote. Quotations and end marks. Use a comma when the quotation ends the sentence or it's interrupted. For example, "I bet that is a great video game," comma, said John. "I bet," John said, "that I can beat you." Notice in each, the quotation mark follows the comma. After game is comma, then the quotation mark. After said, comma, then the quotation mark. When a quotation ends with a question or an exclamation, no comma is needed. "Can I play it?" John wanted to know. "No way!" Donna exclaimed. Placement of end marks in a quote. A comma or period should be placed inside the closing quotation marks. Always go inside in these examples. "I bet you can't beat my score," said John. Notice the comma is before the quote. Donna replied, comma, "I bet you're right." Notice the period before the quotation marks. Placement of end marks in a quote. A question mark or exclamation point should be placed inside the closing quotation marks when the quote itself is a question or an exclamation. Look at the examples. These are better to explain it. "How much longer?" asked the kids. Question mark is in front of the quotes. "Not much," said Mom, in front of the quotation marks. Otherwise, the question mark or the exclamation mark is placed outside. Notice these two examples right here. "I couldn't believe when she said, 'not much.'" In other words, this person is talking about what the mom had said, so it's really not her direct quote. This person is upset, and this belongs to the sentence. This is not the person's direct quote. This is what the mom had said previously. That's why that mark comes after the quote. "Who said the trip is short?" The quotation marks this quote belongs to somebody else. The question mark belongs to the person talking. Therefore, the question mark comes after the quotes. a quote within a quote. You're going to use a single quotation mark to enclose a quote within a quote. Brad said, "My mom always says, look before you leap." Notice that single one is inside this quote right here, is inside this quote. So you use a single quotation mark. Notice how it ends. One single quotation mark, and then the two. The next sentence. Did Mrs. Newman really say, here begins Mrs. Newman's quote, "It's an open test." That ends her quote. The question mark comes after because Susan is talking about Mrs. Newman. And there's Susan's quotes. So Miss Newman's quote is right here, and you do a single quotation mark. Titles. Use quotation marks for the titles of poems, stories, essays, songs, chapter titles, magazine or newspaper articles, individual episodes of a television series. Use italics for titles of books, CDs, the actual magazine, the actual newspaper, the actual television show, the actual radio show, plays, or a title of the entire website. Here's some examples. 1,000 Excuses for Missing Homework. That's a newspaper article in the newspaper, The Teacher's Journal. Ode to Homework is a poem in this book called Students' Poetry. Students' Poetry is a book, so it's italicized. I've Got Exam Blues. It's a song title, and the CD is italicized because it's Homework Blues. That's the actual CD. One of the songs is I've Got Exam Blues, so that is put in quotation marks. The Art of Studying is an essay, therefore you put quotes around it. It's located in a magazine, and the magazine title will be italicized, How to Study. Alright, this ends this movie. Go to your teacher and you're ready for some exercises regarding quotation marks.